Okay, so we cut the last video short. We're now looking at this rows method, which is going to loop through our results, and it's going to give us back a lovely array with all of our results in. So this method, when it's called, needs to create an array. It needs to loop through the amount of results that we have, and we're going to do this in a slightly different way to what we usually might do. And then we're going to append an associative array of our results to this array that we've initially created, and then return it. So I'm going to create an array called rows within here. Now this could be a method up here. I don't really see the need for it to be that. I mean, it would be useful if you had, for example, particular methods that return maybe the first result or something like that. For now, I'm going to keep it in here anyway. So we're going to use a for loop. So a for loop involves creating an initiator. So we're initiating this variable called x. A condition, so we're going to say, well, x is less than, and we're going to say this num rows. And then obviously we increment. So let me just explain why I've done this. So for every result, so in this case we would have 20 results. All this will do is loop 20 times. That's it. So it starts at 0 and it goes up to 20. Okay, that's about it. If we had less than or equal to, this could be 1, but I just prefer this way. So what we're going to do inside of this for loop, we are going to append, so we're using the two angle brackets to append to this rows array, and we're going to return MySQL fetch assoc, which is associative, and here we're going to say this underscore result. So we've already stored the result. We're using the MySQL fetch assoc function on this result, and we're appending it for every single row. What we're then doing is we're going to return rows. So basically all this does is, as I've explained a couple of times already, it takes the an associative array of the results and it just appends it for every row that we return, which is 20. So now we're returning 20 rows, and if we selected 10 fields, if this database table had 10 fields, this rows would contain 10 fields per element of this rows array. So now we can go ahead and we can loop the results. So we use a for each construct. This is basically just going to loop through what we've already appended to this rows array. So db rows as article. Now what I'm going to do is, instead of doing what I did in the first part, I'm going to go ahead and print our article, and I'm going to place this, let's think, well, I'm going to echo this within pre-formatted tags, just pass true in there, and let's take a look at what this does. Okay, so we can now see we've got an array for each result, and we've got an element within here called title. Again, associative because it goes by the field name within here. If it was ID that we were selecting, this would be ID as well. Let me just go ahead and do that actually. So we did this in the previous example. Refresh. There we go. So we've got title and we've got the ID for each result as well. So you can see now that, you know, this is basically what's happened. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and echo, let's just do echo article title, and we'll just pop a break on the end. Okay, so this will now do this. Perfect. As we did in the last part of the tutorial, we used the numRows method again, and all this did was return the value that's already been stored. So we echoed x articles, and obviously go ahead and replace this x with db num rows, and that's it. And then that will return 20 articles. And then again, if we go ahead here and limit this to sort of like 5, everything catches up. So we've got 5 articles returned, and then the number corresponds to the amount that's been returned by this query. So that is our database class. We have basically created something that allows us to easily use a MySQL database, query it, and then loop through the results. So this is just an example, probably could be put into practice with a few minor adjustments, like for example the security in here. You might want a method to sanitize, but really this is a great example of how we can use object-oriented programming to make our life a little bit easier, and we can go ahead and use this functionality elsewhere. And particularly if you were going to expand this class, it would make everything a lot easier.